La nostra umanità ha vissuto nel secolo scorso 3 grandi tragedie inaudite. La prima, quella che generalmente viene considerata come il primo genocidio del XX secolo. Essa ha colpito il vostro popolo armeno, prima nazione cristiana, insieme ai siri cattolici e ortodossi, agli assiri, ai caldei, ai greci. Furono uccisi vescovi, sacerdoti, religiose, donne, uomini, anziani e persino bambini e malati indefesi.
The Armenian Genocide is an unforgettable and undeniable fact of history, deeply rooted in the annals of modern history and in the common consciousness of the Armenian people. Therefore, any attempt to erase it from history and from our common memory is doomed to failure.
So why don't we start with what happened nearly 100 years ago next
Sure.
month?
In 1915, in April the 24th, the Istanbul authorities, Constantinople it was called then, rounded up the Armenian intellectuals, the community leaders, took them off and killed them, and that was the beginning of a genocide which took over half the Armenian race. So over half died.
Yeah,
this was genocide as we now know it.
Okay, so it was a term that didn't exist until the 1930s?
It didn't. It was invented by a brilliant Polish Jewish lawyer called Raphael Lemkin. And he was obsessed by what happened to the Armenians. We had a genocide convention in 1948, and Raphael Lemkin, the author of it, was inspired, as I say, by the Armenian Genocide.
So we have this irony, which is this man invents this term to apply to this event.
Exactly.
And now the whole debate is whether this term applies to this event.
That's right. And
imagine for a moment the history books of the Western world being printed without having the story of World War I in there. Here is a significant country in our world spending an enormous amount of its money, of its resources on one subject. Don't you mention the Armenian Genocide. And that's what their ambassadors and their designated representatives, including in academia, are busy doing all around the world.
Something else. But the Ottomans thought this was a strategic problem that couldn't be fixed with what was at hand. What happens? They relocate lots of people. The semantics are important. Relocation, I picked that word because there is an implication that the people can return. The intent of the Ottoman state is to move these people and bring them back at some future date. These are the questions that generate historical controversy. How many of them were there in 1914? What happened to them? How many died? Was there an extermination plan? Did the Young Turks try to ethnically homogenize Eastern Anatolia? Did the Armenian state act at any time with intent to exterminate the Armenians? I can't tell you the answer to this. We all have opinions. I have opinions. I can't tell you with assurance what the answers might be.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Erickson. My name is Adam Hamparian. I work with the Armenian National Committee. You said several times in your remarks that about history having an agenda. You said resources drive policy, resources determine policy. In that light and in the spirit of transparency, could you share an accounting of the relationship between the Institute of Turkish Studies, on which you serve, and the Turkish government, which both denies the Armenian genocide and criminalizes discussion of that crime.
It's way off topic. Let me just.
My question is, why are so many people who deny the genocide associated with the Turkish government?
Have I denied the genocide?
Oh, so you believe it's a genocide?
Have
Do you
I-
believe it was a genocide?
Do you have a question? Can we get her out of here? Should I have you removed? I really, I want to answer
This is not
questions.
Turkey,
I
and
want to
you're
answer
not allowed
questions
to
about the lecture.
silence people who don't agree
You are
with you.
way off the lecture.
Oh my gosh.
So I'd like you just to stop. Thank you.
Yes.
Good.
This is Turkey, people. This.
Quick last question. As you were asking, so do you believe that 1915 had constituted genocide? Do you believe it was a genocide?
I would rather not answer that because that's not what the book is about and it's not what the lecture is about.
Because you just said I didn't deny the genocide, I just wanted to clarify your position on this.
Yeah, here's what I think. I have no position. I'm ambivalent. It could have been, maybe it wasn't. I really, there are days where I wake up and I think that's probably genocide. There are days where I wake up and I think probably not.
We have no reluctance. We have no reluctance to recognize genocide in Darfur. We have no reluctance to talk about the Cambodian genocide or the Rwandan genocide or the Holocaust. Why is it only this genocide? Is it because Turkey is a strong ally? Is that an ethical or moral reason to ignore the murder of 1.5 million people? Why is it we don't say, let's relegate the Holocaust to historians or relegate the Cambodian genocide, the Rwandan genocide? Why is it only this genocide that we should let the Turks acknowledge or not acknowledge? And Madam Secretary, Hrant Dink, who was murdered outside of his office, is not a testimony to Turkish progress. The fact that Turkey brought a Nobel-winning author up on charges of insulting Turkishness because he talked about the murder of the Armenians doesn't show great efforts of reconciliation in Turkey. Why is it only this genocide we're incapable of recognizing?
Congressman, we have recognized, and the President recognizes every year in a resolution that he himself issues, the historical circumstances and the tragedy that befell the Armenian people. Well,
you recognize more than anyone as a diplomat the power of words.
Yes.
And I'm sure you supported the recognition of genocide in Darfur, not calling it tragedy, not calling it atrocity, not calling it anything else, but the power and significance of calling it genocide. Why is that less important in the case of the Armenian genocide?
Congressman, the power here is in helping these people to move forward. I do believe that people are better left to try and deal with this themselves if they're going to be able to move forward. We have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose here? And I think the purpose is to acknowledge, of course, the historic tragedy. But the purpose is also to allow Turks and Armenians to be able to move forward. And yes, Turkey is a good ally, and that is important.
And I got to learn about Armenia through a friend of mine named Bob Manoukian, who, in probably picking on my innocence at the time, said, you know some senators, maybe you could talk to them and see if they could talk about the Armenian genocide on the floor of the Senate. So I tried, and
how did that go?
That didn't play so well.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, it didn't. We have some military bases apparently in Turkey I didn't know about.
Turkey is, after all, a regional superpower and an essential broker between the U.S. and the Muslim world. It has the second largest army in NATO, and the U.S. relies on the country's air bases for its wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. 70% of American supplies to those wars go through Turkey, which is also a crucial conduit for oil.
The denial of the Armenian genocide in Washington, or the failure to recognize it, is essentially a new phenomenon. If you look around at these various posters that many of you have, they talk about the various presidents, Cleveland, going way back, Roosevelt, as recently as Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, using the term genocide. So when anybody tells you that somehow it hasn't been the history of this country to recognize the genocide, in fact it has. It goes back to Ambassador Morgenthau and all the presidents and many Congresses that continue to recognize it and use the term genocide. It's really only within the last 20 years or so that we've seen that failure at the presidential level.
On another issue before Congress, I urge members to oppose the Armenian Genocide resolution now being considered by the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We all deeply regret the tragic suffering of the Armenian people that began in 1915. But this resolution is not the right response to these historic mass killings. And its passage would do great harm to our relations with a key ally in NATO and in the global war on terror. Thank you.
For those of you who aren't aware, there was a genocide that did take place against the Armenian people. It is one of these situations where we have seen a constant denial on the part of the Turkish government and others that this occurred.
Today, Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. For the 6th time in a row, President Obama deferred to Turkey and refused to use the word he promised to use, though he noted, quote, "I have consistently stated my own view of what occurred in 1915, and my view has not changed." President Obama called the Armenian Genocide undeniable in a 2008 letter to the Armenian American community. Apparently, it is quite deniable.
And next time you see somebody come up and say, when I get into office, I'm going to do this, or when I get into office, I'm going to do that, just remember those 3 words. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Thank you.
All right, what's the story? Why are you the man who is involved with so much? Why Armenia and more genocide?
Well, I think it's important. It's the one that hasn't been acknowledged, quite honestly. It's 100 years, it's a 100-year anniversary, and our organization has been, one of the things that's so important to us is trying to prevent it before it happens. That's the whole point of it. And part of this is acknowledging when it happened before.
So you're here today and you're going to talk about Armenia. We're bringing water to Armenia. Oh man,
Good that we still remember the tragedy that happened there in 1950.
This was considered to be the modern genocide. This tragedy is known as the Armenian Genocide, which is commemorated worldwide on April 24th. Please join us in commemorating the loss of those innocent lives of millions of people.
Armenia must have its day in court. We would, in that situation, welcome the opportunity to submit evidence, which we consider to be overwhelming, that the massacres that killed over 1 million Armenians would today be labeled as genocide.
Արվացից աշխարհներ ծնծում, Ինչքան պետք լինի, կգրվենք այսպես, հայացքի համար աղբես ու ես։ Ինչքան պետք լինի, կգրվենք այսպես, հայացքի համար աղբես ու ես։ Էլ հետարց չգա գրիվ ես ասի, Օրնանքը դուր մեզ ու միլան մայրի, Թե մի օր գրվիք, զույգ արձիկ դեսնես, Էլ մեր հոգին մեն աղբես ու ես։ Թե մի օր գրվիք, զույգ արձիկ դեսնես, Էլ մեր հոգին մեն աղբես ու ես։ Մաղճանքը բացվեն թրները մեր կոց, Ոսկի գարվեն սևոր հայոց, ու դու գտարնան հատուճան պես, Ձապով ձիձավով աղպես ու ես, ու դու գտարնանք հաղթուճան պես, Ձապով ձիձավով աղպես ու ես, Ձապով ձիձավով աղպես ու ես, Ձապով ձիձավով աղբես ու ես։
Imagine if this was the 1940s. World War II was just started. And America decided not to enter the war on the side of Britain. Imagine if America became allies with Nazi Germany. and decided that we were going to push aside the Holocaust. Never use the word Holocaust in government policy. Imagine what a life that would be. Imagine being Jewish and living in LA and not hearing your president or your Congress use the word Holocaust. That's exactly what Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians feel